There is a lot going on today in the market, but according to Cern Basher, we should keep our eye on the prize. He says it's really all about SpaceX and or various mergers and things. I assume I was reading into that and maybe I'm wrong, but Cern is here to make sure that I get it right. Cern, what do you got for me today?
Hello, Randy. Yeah, I'm not sure that it's all about SpaceX, but I think this is an important topic, particularly for Tesla investors, right? It's something that has captured a lot of airtime lately. So I thought we would spend a little bit more time today and talk about it together.
All right, that's good. So we have the merger that's already happened between XAI and SpaceX. If I understand it correctly, this is the largest merger of all times
For private companies, I
for
think.
private companies. Okay, so the
Yeah.
Aramco merger, was that bigger? Was that the
Well, the biggest IPO.
biggest IPO?
And
But
we'll
what
get
about
into that
merger?
actually today as well. We'll talk about that.
All right. So, but the
Yep.
merger, if there is a merger between SpaceX, the new company, and Tesla, that would be like overwhelmingly the largest merger of all times, right?
I think that's right. If you're talking about a, two, $3 trillion combination, I think that would be. Yeah.
I don't think it's possible that there could have been a bigger merger.
Right.
Okay, all right, okay. And then let's talk about the market for at least 1 minute. I claimed this morning in my show that the market was looking for a bottom, and I thought the bottom might be 3% lower than it was right at the moment. And then the market turned around, but it could be a dead cat bounce. We could still go, down some more. And what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is all sort of normal volatility. It's never fun to go through it. I feel like there's a lot of people that are very focused on sort of where things might go, and they're just
Mhm.
kind of waiting for that. Or a lot of people might look at a chart and sort of pick a point and say, well, that's where it's headed. It's obvious to me by looking at this chart, that's where it's going, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of activity like that, and I think that some of that is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in the short term.
Mhm.
If enough people exit and then wait for a bottom, then that may or may not happen. But it creates a lot of volatility. Ultimately, in my view, for long-term investors, this volatility is a gift.
Mhm.
It's nothing but a gift because if stocks just went up in a straight line, you wouldn't get these periodic buying opportunities.
Right.
Unfortunately, what happens, I think, with the majority of individual investors is they get scared out of their positions because inevitably there's something that the media is reporting on that seems plausible enough and it's very scary,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And I think that gives retail investors, overall, what looks like a bad rating in terms of their success, because you have uninformed and or scaredy cats
Mm,
who are buying high on momentum and then selling low on the opposite momentum.
that's right.
And so it ends up they don't know enough about the stocks to make wise decisions, but they're also inclined to, the regular fear and greed thing.
And the really funny part about that is then they'll typically blame the CEO of the company for their
Right.
bad investment decisions,
That's
right?
exactly right. Yes.
They'll blame Elon for, you made me buy the stock at this height and now you haven't protected the downside. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure that you're responsible for that, not the CEO.
I might have fallen into that same trap, except when I was a teenager and started investing, the very first company I was paid attention to was Fairchild Camera and Instrument. And they were putting a lot of the cameras on the satellites back in the
Mhm.
day. Yes, there were satellites when I was younger. We already had them when I was in my teens. Anyway, and it would bounce back and forth between about 20 and 110. And I kept buying it at 20 and selling it at 110. I did like three or four times because it just did it over and over and over again. You could almost predict it. Well, I did predict it. And so I kind of learned early that there was this whole idea of buying low and selling high. I don't know.
Yeah, although again, if you stretch out your time frame long enough, the high is not a terminal point,
Right.
right? What people thought was high back in 1929 is it would be today's super, super low point if we ever went back there.
Right.
So, given enough time, none of this daily movement really matters.
It's true. It's
But
true.
we all live in the present, and I know that no one likes to buy stocks at a higher level and see it go down. Everybody wants to have instant appreciation.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
just human nature. But
I
unfortunately, the world doesn't always work that way.
no, I always want instant appreciation, and it doesn't always work out that way. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Although some of my fans here on the show give me appreciation every day, and
they do.
it's great. I love
Yeah,
it.
and you
Yeah.
deserve that.
And then there's the other ones. Oh, okay. So
All
are
right,
you ready to load up the show today?
I am. Let's get our heads out of the clouds and into space.
Okay.
This is quite a nice image. This was from the announcement of xAI joining SpaceX.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So we're going to focus a little bit on this today. Before we do, again, we've been talking about the markets. I thought this was kind of a cute cartoon. One chart fits all.
Yeah.
And for now, we'd turn the chart down, and tomorrow it'll turn back
Okay.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hear from two wise men
Okay.
about what their thoughts.
I thought that was what we were already doing.
Well, two more wise men. Well, sorry, one more wise man, because you're on the list here, Randy.
Oh, I see. I see.
But first of all, before we get to you, Chris Camillo says fear-induced corrections that take down all stocks indiscriminately are the greatest gift. Chris is one of the most successful individual retail investors out there, so listen to the man, please.
Yes.
Okay. Now, he may have a different approach than everybody else. That's fine.
He does.
More than one way to get there.
Yep.
Randy Kirk, I mean, maybe you know this guy. You probably know him pretty well. You say 1 month of data. Don't panic over 1 month of low job numbers. So maybe you want to give everybody a 30-second explanation of that, Randy?
Well, actually, I got that from somebody who most of us look at derisively. It was Chair Powell. And we had just had 1 month of good numbers.
Yeah.
And Chairman Powell said, look, you can't go on 1 month of data. And of course, that's absolutely true. And it's certainly true in business. You can't, have one great month and think, okay, I don't have to work the rest of the year. Or you can't have one bad month and all of a sudden, start thinking it's time to close the doors. In fact, you could have two or three bad months in business and still be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel because of this or that or the other. Anyway, that's all I was trying to say is don't, data's important, but 1 month is not determinative.
And there might be some seasonal / weather issues influencing the data, right?
There can be so many things influencing the data. In fact, I asked just a few minutes ago on X, why are Trump's numbers down so much? His numbers have just fallen off a cliff the last few days. Well, what's going on? Is it because the market's down? And so there's a bunch of folks who might have liked him last week, but because the market's down, they don't like him today. But anyway, you don't know, and his numbers could turn around tomorrow and be back up to 50. So you just don't know. Yeah.
I take all those numbers with a grain of salt. They're asking the people that don't like them more than the people that do like them. So
Right.
those kinds of surveys are notoriously pretty poor. But anyway, I guess if they consistently do it over time, you get some measure of something.
Yes.
This is what I warn about all the time. Mainstream media loves to put out catchy articles, fear-inducing articles, but it is all noise. We've seen that time and time again, and people that follow Tesla very closely know exactly what we're talking about, but it also applies to pretty much everything else out there at this point.
In fact, on X, Cern, I'm glad you brought that up because it's really becoming a pet peeve of mine. There's a lot of folks that are kind of in your business or related to your business who just want to pump the fear on X every single day. They'll
Yep.
take whatever the data is and turn it into some kind of fear thing. And so I just encourage people to watch out for that. They're either selling something or they're trying to get clicks so they can make something on X. But most of the time, if you look a little deeper into their stats, you'll see that they're just ginning them. They're just using them to create a fear.
Yep, fear sells, Randy.
Yes, it does. Yes.
All right, let's get into it. From a perspective of a Tesla investor, when we look at Elon's other companies, we hold Tesla, but we want xAI, SpaceX, that's now all one company. This, by the way, was a chart done in 2024.
Okay. All right.
It's a little bit dated now, you know.
Yeah.
And then Neuralink and Boring Company, we want, we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And this has been discussion about, you know, an ex-holding company for a while. So again, this is from an article I posted in September of 2024.
Mm.
And in this article, I make the point that Musk Inc., as I call it, is a disruption machine. And I posited that you know more than 100 companies in the S&P 500 index would be disrupted in one way or another. I'm not suggesting they get put out of business, but just impacted one way or another by what Elon is doing across his companies.
Oh, yeah.
And those companies account for more than 50% of the index's market value.
Okay.
So while it may be 20% of the companies, it's probably more than that, but it might be more than 50% of the market value is impacted in some way. Right. And again, this at that time, this was the lineup of companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And here was at the time the top companies,
Okay.
Apple leading the way, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Berkshire Hathaway, Lilly, Broadcom, and then Tesla at the time. Okay. So, you know, there's some big companies here, I think, that are going to be impacted. As a way of background, what I think is going on here, and we've talked about this before, again, this is an older chart that I put together, is that Elon is taking us from one system, one legacy system, to a new system. And we've got many examples of this, and this was kind of my way of trying to sort of show some of the examples here, right? So with all of his companies, he kind of moved from a linear problem-solving approach to more of exponential innovation approach. Right? He talks about how everybody at his company is involved in R&D. It's not like an R&D department. Everybody is involved in R&D. More concretely, Boring Company, we're going from 2D transportation, roads on the surface, to 3D urban transport, tunnels. Right? Neuralink is freeing us from biological constraints and enhancing human capabilities, or bringing back what was lost, perhaps, right? Eyesight, feeling, and so on. SpaceX, Starlink, limited connectivity around the world to global connectivity. SpaceX, single planet economy to eventually multi-planetary economy. Now, that's a little far out for most of us. It's not going to impact us, but that's where we're headed. Tesla, the traditional assembly line to the machine that builds the machine. You've heard Elon talk about this for years, etc. Tesla Energy, fossil fuels to renewable energy. EVs, internal combustion vehicles to electric vehicles. And there's, again, more and more examples here. I won't go through them all. The point with this, though, is that we're moving from one entirely, to an entirely different system. And one that 𝐄𝐦𝐚𝐲 has documented and talked about a lot, and the features about that, how we're driving the cost of energy towards zero, the cost of intelligence towards zero, the cost of transportation towards zero. And that in turn then will just impact every single thing in the economy.
It's interesting. While you're talking, I'm just thinking, about the insurance division. And the insurance division, again, first principles. It said, let's not judge people based on where they live and how old they are. Let's judge them on a daily basis based on how safe they are. And we can monitor that. And that's a complete change in the way insurance would be done. And people would gamify it, which they are. And if you gamify it in order to get your insurance down the lowest, you're going to have less accidents and you're going to cause less accidents. And you're probably going to avoid more accidents. And the combination is going to reduce the overall accident rate. And so, as more and more people gamify it, you end up with a complete transformation.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And so many of these things, I think, are so obvious.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you want to have real-time driving behavior data, right?
Right.
Why would you have an insurance policy based on something else? It makes no sense.
Right.
And yet the whole industry worldwide is structured that way.
Yes. And still. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the early days of all this. And now eventually it may not matter if we get to an autonomous vehicle world, that won't even be an issue. It'll just delete that part of the insurance industry altogether.
Right.
But between now and then, it's on its way to changing. A little slower than we would like to see, but it is changing. Will change. Yeah, and of course the big one, and we'll talk about this in a bit more detail later, from human labor to robotic labor.
Right.
This for me is one of the most profound changes on this list. But again, not to minimize any of these others, they're all significant in their own massive ways. Okay, so it's logical then to think about combining all of Elon Musk's companies into one entity, essentially. Right? Because these are system changers. They're not just automobile industry company going from car to EVs. We're talking about changing the entire system on planet Earth in so many different ways. Now, maybe Elon isn't changing everything, but a large swath of the way the world operates is going to be impacted and changed by what he's doing with his various companies.
Yes, between autonomy and tunneling, you could end up with hardly any vehicles parking anywhere.
Yeah.
Which changes one of the biggest uses of land in the United States and the cities, especially, is parking spaces.
Yeah. And of course, again, if you think about, how is Elon changing the education system? Well, AI.
Yeah.
How is Elon changing healthcare? Well, AI
Yeah.
and robotics. I mean, actually, I'm actually hard pressed now to come up with an industry that won't be impacted by something that he's doing in one of his companies.
100%.
All right. So my post from a couple of years ago now probably should be revised to say 100% of the S&P 500 will be impacted. So anyway, let's just stick with the 50 for now. But
Okay.
so again, it's not a big leap for me to say, okay, it makes sense for Elon's companies to be under one umbrella. And we've been talking about this for a while now, this idea of an X holding company and so on. But now we're kind of faced with that. And now that xAI and SpaceX have merged, it's logical to think about putting Tesla and SpaceX together.
Right.
Okay. So here's a potential model for that. It's what Google did with, it's what Alphabet did with Google.
Okay.
Okay. But first of all, let me just set the stage here. I think actually what we're seeing is kind of this head-to-head competition between Elon and his companies and Alphabet. And a couple of examples here, right? So AI on Earth, you've got xAI versus DeepMind. AI in space. And I noted Alphabet doesn't have a rocket company yet. That could change. But they certainly will benefit from SpaceX lowering launch costs.
Right.
So they're kind of frenemies in that situation. Sure. Autonomous vehicles. Well, Google's Waymo versus Robotaxi. Social media, you got YouTube versus X. Humanoid robots. Optimus versus, Google has made investments in robotics companies. And we've seen some videos from DeepMind where they're working on this.
Right.
AI chips, Google's TPUs versus Tesla's. So they're kind of lining up in many, many areas. And so if I'm Elon, how do I best compete against Google?
And you forgot search.
Yep.
Because you got search and now you got Grok and you've got all the associated potential for how search is going to end up being. I don't use Google search ever anymore. I might look up a name or a spelling. That's about it,
And that's Google's cash cow.
Yeah.
It's allowing them to fund what is it, the 185 billion in capex they're going to do this year?
Right.
Right. And Tesla's focused on doing 20 billion.
Yeah.
People freaking out about that. Well, so again, if you're Elon, how do you compete against somebody that's spending 185 billion a year? Yeah. Well, you're more efficient with your capex.
Yes.
Let's say you get 4 times the amount of value out of 20 billion. Well, that's 80 billion of capex. You're still up against 185 billion.
Right.
So one way to deal with this is to get big, to get on the same terms as your competition. And of course, it's not just Google that they're competing against. The whole macro hard effort is against Microsoft.
Right.
Right. And of course, you've got OpenAI out there and you've got Meta and you've got others. So this may be a good model. So let's take a look at this for a second. And I forget exactly when this was, when Google did this, I think 2015, if I recall.
Right. Might
be 10 or 11 years ago. And at this time, I think they were like 11 years in when they founded the company. Okay. So this is from when they announced this Alphabet.
Right.
So at that time, G's for Google, right? We now have a parent holding company, and Google's a part of this.
Mhm.
Okay. And he says, Google is not a conventional company. We do not intend to become one. Okay. Yeah, 2015. So the idea there was to separate Google's money printing business, search and ads, from its more, its innovation engines, more speculative, perhaps moonshots, as they called them.
Mhm.
And it made it easier for Wall Street to sort of focus on valuing the company, right? If you can kind of break it out and say, okay, here's our cash cow, and here's how you can model that, and here's everything else.
Right.
Okay. So the core Google was search, YouTube, Android, Maps, Ads, Google Cloud. Okay. So for Google shareholders, this process was seamless and automatic. There was no merger they had to vote on. It was just a holding company reorganization. Okay. So for Tesla and SpaceX, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be a reorganization. It would be a merger. It would be a roll-up,
Right.
taking separate companies and merging them into one. So it's more complicated for Tesla, right? Shareholders would have to approve this, whereas Google, they just announced it.
Yeah, and in a way though, it's pretty funny though, because it's just really technically different. Because in point of fact, it's all Elon controlled companies.
Yeah.
And they do so much stuff in between each other. So yes, it will be technically harder because of the SEC and the rules and stuff, but it's really accomplishing the same thing.
Yeah, I'd push back on that a little bit because at this point, Tesla is not technically controlled by Elon,
That's true. That's true.
right? From an ownership or voting
Technically,
standpoint, he
technically.
doesn't have it, and that's one of his issues,
Yeah.
right? And this would help solve for that, and we'll get into the math of that here in a second. So I just note here the brilliance of the Alphabet move was that it made the company easier to value.
Right.
They weren't really putting anything together. They were actually kind of technically sort of separating it so people could see the parts.
Hmm.
The brilliance of X Corp, as I called it here, is it gives Elon, I think, the size to compete against the likes of Google and Microsoft and others.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, here's some interesting facts. Alphabet owns 7 to 7.5% of SpaceX.
Right.
So back in January of 2015, Google and Google and Fidelity combined, invested about $1 billion for a combined 10% stake. So I guess Alphabet got, 70% or so of that.
Right.
And today, at a $1 trillion valuation for SpaceX, Alphabet's share is worth about 70 to 75 billion. So not bad. Take a spare billion and 70 to 75 exit. Not a bad investment.
Not bad at all.
Actually, it's a bit more than that because it was $1 billion combined with Fidelity. So Google's share of that was, it's probably 100x, I guess, since they invested basically.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, Alphabet, as you know, owns Waymo, about 80% of Waymo, I believe. And at its latest valuation of 126 billion, that's about 100 billion for Alphabet. So perversely, you can kind of think of SpaceX's success is helping to fund Alphabet's Waymo expansion. Because Waymo is not a cash cow, it's a cash hog at this point. It's eating
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now Alphabet's not monetized their SpaceX investment yet, so technically that's not happening.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. But we do have an interesting situation here where it's kind of like Sun Tzu's art of war. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Right?
Yep.
So that's interesting. We'll see how this evolves. And then further, the links between Google and Elon are really quite interesting. So Google acquired DeepMind in 2014. Elon was an angel investor in DeepMind. And this announcement, I think this merger came through pretty quickly, but Elon and Peter Thiel actually tried to put a deal together to acquire DeepMind, to keep it out of Google's hands.
Okay.
Okay, and it failed for some reason. They couldn't pull it off. So that was interesting, right? And Elon said that, the reason that he helped co-found OpenAI was because of the comments that Larry Page had said about AI safety.
Hmm. Yep.
right? And he says here, Elon says that when he urged Page to be careful about AI's existential risk to humanity, Page calls him a speciesist,
Right.
right? Someone who prioritizes human consciousness over machine consciousness. And Elon was horrified by that, right? So
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons that he created OpenAI was a counter to Google.
Right. Right.
And then now, of course, here we are, he's suing the now for-profit OpenAI. And what's interesting is what happens if he wins that court battle? He's asked for 134 billion in damages.
Right.
Could OpenAI fall into the hands of what's now SpaceX?
Could, I suppose. I don't know. But anyway, it's certainly intriguing because as a so-called law graduate 100 years ago, I've looked at the thing backwards and forwards and inside out. And every time I think I know how this case is going to turn out, a week later, I think the opposite. So it's a close call. We'll see what happens.
It's going to be the most watched case since Johnny Depp. Yeah. We get our mega pints out, Randy,
That's
and
right.
watch the
That's
drama.
right. Yes, our popcorn for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings me to a more recent post that you, I think, did a bit of a show on Friday, and I want to discuss it with you here as well. So I wanted to give, again, a little bit of balance to this discussion. I feel that a lot of people are like 100% for this or 100% against it, and I'm kind of in the middle. I'm seeing some gray areas here.
Hmm.
Okay. So again, in this post, I referenced my 2024 post and basically said I see the benefits of this. And in that post, I talked about how SpaceX was going to disrupt computing,
Right.
right? Little did I know how big, AI data centers is a topic it was going to be, but, I could sort of see that coming in terms of putting computing in space.
Yeah,
Okay.
and by the way, I just can't help repeating it, even though my group should know this by now. But there's always new people watching, CERN. Brian Wang,
Yes.
Brian Wang was talking about data centers on Mars before anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay. There's some little book that he wrote some information, and even before the book came out, he was talking about data centers on Mars. So hanging out with the Randy Kirk group, including Cern Basher, is a good idea.
Brian is a very smart guy, very much worth listening to, and ahead of his time, I think, on many things. So my comment here was it's too early to be for or against because there isn't a merger proposal on the table,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not for or against right now. I'm just sort of putting out, the pros and the cons kind of thing,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
The pros, I think, are obvious, as we just went through,
Right.
combining these companies
Right.
and being a competitive force against these other big players in the world. That to me is the principal reason for doing this. But let's talk about some of the issues, right? So people talk about dilution to Tesla shareholders.
Mhm.
Yes, you're bringing in a whole bunch of other shares. Yes, you're getting diluted, but the question is then what are you getting for that?
Mhm.
Does SpaceX, xAI, the combination add value to that? Clearly it does.
Right.
Clearly data centers in space are going to be a huge thing, not to mention the growth of Starlink, right? Not to mention the growth of the launch business once Starship is in operation. That's going to open up that market for all kinds of activity going into space, not just data centers
Right.
and not just Starlinks. Okay. I worry a little bit about the valuation. These are Elon's companies, the whole fiduciary duty thing and conflicts of interests. And you need an independent committee at Tesla to deal with this, not Elon.
Right. Right. I was thinking that Besant could head it up.
Yeah, sure. It might be a little distracted. Um, but it's interesting though, because that independent committee could be negotiating with Elon at SpaceX.
Right. Right. Right.
Elon doesn't need a special committee there. He's in control of it,
Right.
right? So that's interesting. Um, I think that Tesla certainly being now, well, all the companies out of Delaware, that helps for sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But there's risks here. I don't want to just say there's no shareholder lawsuit risk. I think there is long term, but they may just have to deal with that risk and move forward. That's fine.
There's a possibility that no matter how fair, you could, get four people on a committee that everybody would agree are eminently fair. You could say, hey, Elon has really not anything to gain by favoring one company over the other company. So what would he, I can't think of a thing he has to gain. So why wouldn't he, be fair in his analysis? The boards of directors, same thing. So you can say, okay, all those things are true, and yet people can still sue. I mean, you can sue over anything. And so it's very likely, but that's just part of life today.
Yeah. Well, there is one slight detail where Elon is conflicted here, and I'll show you the math on that in a second.
All right.
All right. One of the reasons that he started XAI was because he said that a lot of these AI developers and researchers wanted a pure play AI opportunity. They didn't want to do it within Tesla because they felt that was diluted by the auto business, energy, and everything else. As exciting as all that is, they wanted their own company and their own pure play AI stock. Right. So that was one of the reasons that he set it up.
Right.
And he could pay them with stock.
Right.
Now, those early employees have done very well.
Very well.
But you also still have to compensate the current employees and new ones that come in. And if you combine it with Tesla, and of course now it's combined with SpaceX, but you're diluting now that growth opportunity for that specific set of people. And if it's now part of a public company, you might have to pay a lot more in cash than you would in stock. So now we're getting into the Mark Zuckerberg 100 million per head kind of compensation. Right. And that's just the reality of AI. There's a talent war. And then the flip side of that is if I'm a talented developer at Tesla or SpaceX, I'm looking across the desk and I'm seeing that other guy making 100 million and I'm making something less. So even though the culture of Elon's companies is pretty copacetic, there's issues like that could come up now.
Sure.
Right. Now, I think that Elon can handle this very well. I'm not suggesting that this is a problem that can't be dealt with, but I'm just putting it out there as this is a harsh reality now.
Yeah. Now, Elon says, I've actually quoted him in one or more books on this. He says that the people that work for him, they care about the money, don't get me wrong, but basically they want to be part of the mission.
Yep.
They're more mission driven than they are money driven. Again, I can make the argument all day long and people will still not believe me. After $5 million, $10 million in the bank account and a million or two per year in income, you can't buy much more happiness than what you can buy for that number. So buying into a company where you're going to be very happy with the mission and excited to get out of bed in the morning, I think is going to be very important to most of those characters.
I think that's true. That said, if you've got someone like Zuckerberg offering you 100 million and you're currently getting paid 10, it's still a hard thing to say no to.
I hear you.
Right. Okay. This is a little bit of a wishy-washy category, but this whole thing, these are international companies.
Yeah.
And Brian Wang, I think on your show, mentioned that he's concerned about European Union
Right.
okaying the merger. Like you may be able to push it through the US because we've got White House and so on that's aligned. But do you think anybody in Europe's aligned with SpaceX and Tesla right now? I mean, here's an opportunity to extract a pound of flesh.
Right.
You want this deal put through, then we want X, Y, Z, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that's an interesting wrinkle to this, is what favors need to be called in order to get this approved by European regulators. Not to mention China. There's some Department of Defense issues here. The Chinese may not be so wild about having Tesla with this manufacturing site on their soil. Now, somebody mentioned that, well, Boeing does this successfully. Boeing sells airplanes into China. Well, do they make them there?
No.
But again,
actually, sort of they do because China stole all of their intellectual property and made,
yeah. Yeah. And again, I don't think these are insurmountable issues, but they are issues.
Issues, yeah, they're issues. I think they're significant issues, yes.
And then just from the political side, again, we might have a White House that's aligned now, but what happens when we have an eventual change in party in the White House? Right? Then what?
Well, that would make it important to get this done in the next 18 months, which
Well,
seems like maybe a possibility.
yeah, but then you've got the potential monopoly scrutiny. So the deal gets done, right? And now you've got xAI providing the AI brains to Tesla for the cars and Optimus, and you've got Tesla providing chips to SpaceX at favorable prices. Are they disadvantaging any of the competition? For other people that might need Starlink or other people that might need Tesla's chips or the AI data centers that SpaceX is operating, are there any sort of antitrust issues? They have to be very careful about these things. And as you know, these become political issues.
And well, 100%. Well,
Microsoft being sued,
yeah,
antitrust, Google trying to break up Google and all this stuff, right? It happens
yeah,
all the time.
yeah. I think it increases the risk, and there are definitely issues. You mentioned a few of them that people could argue create that problem. The interesting thing is the technology is so advanced. It's like one of these things where how do you break it up in a way
Yeah,
that you still have, something of value?
right.
Yeah.
Well, regulators aren't so worried about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
what's interesting is about the whole Google antitrust thing that
yeah,
came from what I thought was a pretty friendly administration to Google.
yeah.
Now, it may have been that Google just needed to campaign donations and that went away.
Right.
Maybe that's the solution here is you just
Right.
give more money to politicians and make them happy that way. So anyway, these are risks.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, they can be manageable. Maybe they're unavoidable risks. Again, if the overarching goal is to be able to compete on a level with Google and Microsoft and others, you may just have to deal with that because those companies deal with this
Hmm.
at the scale they are. Um, and then, mission risk, amazing abundance is an inspiring vision. But you're on the board. You've got to worry about some of the details. Um, I I buy into the vision. I totally see it. And again, in a minute, we're going to talk about some of that in terms of what it means for the world. Uh, but still, are they trying to do too much too quickly here? That if I was on the board, I'd be trying to slow things down a little bit, I think. And then we talked about China's response. This is an issue long term anyway, I think. I'm not convinced that we're going to allow Chinese humanoid robots in this country. To me, they're the ultimate spy machine. Not only do they surveil, but they can actually do stuff,
Right. Right.
right? Well, China's going to have the same issue with
Right.
US humanoid robots. So is there a separation that's going to happen anyway out of China? But right now, Giga Shanghai is a jewel in the crown for Tesla.
Yeah.
Elon's navigated that beautifully. So kudos to him. Um, Conglomerate discount. I mean, most big companies get a big discount for being a part of a conglomerate. I guess you could say, well, it's worked for Google. Berkshire Hathaway seems to be doing okay.
Mhm.
So there are plenty of cases where it's working and it has worked.
Mhm.
There are a lot of investors that I've talked to, that Tesla investors that don't want the SpaceX exposure. They want their Tesla, you know,
Sure.
to execute on the plans that are on the books now, and they want to see that. They feel that the SpaceX opportunity is a little bit longer term. They don't want that as part of their company. From a financial advisor perspective, I would like to have two stocks to allocate to because if one's high and one's low, then I get a chance to rebalance. Whereas if it's one big company, then it's just kind of one big blob that you just have to own. Again, these are things I think that Elon wouldn't be too worried about.
Yeah, I think you're right. You've got uh, I think there is a conglomerate issue here, and I think all of a sudden your auto division becomes, in terms of auto, if we continue to sell automobiles at all, it becomes kind of a like you're not really getting value for it.
Yeah.
But the other things are going to be so huge
Yeah.
that it's really not going to matter. I mean, Starlink alone, again, bringing up Brian Wang for the 18th time. Brian, 3 years ago, in the book, the Elon Musk mission, Brian said SpaceX will be the largest of the companies because of Starlink. And that
Yeah.
was before we knew about data centers in the sky.
There's a lot of Tesla investors that don't see that yet.
Yeah, you've just multiplied. It's such an easy multiplication. You just multiply the number of I'm sorry, the number of people that are available, the TAM. You've got at least 2 billion people on Earth that have either inadequate or no connectivity. You multiply that times, I don't know, $50 a month, $40 a month. I mean, you pick a number and it's still massive, massive numbers.
Yeah. Um, and then the final thing here is, one fire burns the whole house down.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have separate companies, then a problem at SpaceX is contained at SpaceX.
Right.
Whether that's a regulatory issue, a political issue, or liability issue, and you've got that separated from Tesla. That's not a bad thing to have. If it's a holding company structure, then maybe there's containment there anyway. I don't know, but these are all risk factors I think that are out there.
Right.
None of them I think are a death knell for a deal, but they are issues.
Right.
All right, let's look at the math. As it stands right now, before we started recording this, Tesla's valuation was about 1.494 billion. Trillion. There I go, making the same.
Yeah. We were
I heard Larry doing that. 1.494 trillion.
Yes.
These numbers are so big. Okay. I believe Elon's economic ownership is something like 15.3%. There's a little bit of uncertainty around his current comp plans, where this stands, but let's say it's here. That's about 229 billion of value to Elon.
Okay.
SpaceX at $1 trillion valuation. He owned, I believe, 42% of the company. So that's 420 billion. Nice round number there. And 𝐒𝐚𝐲 at $250 billion valuation. He owned 59% of that, I believe, about 150 billion. So all combined about 800 billion. And if you just take his ownership percentage, right, and that was about 29, that would be 29% combined ownership if you combined all three companies.
Okay.
Now, SpaceX, though, I believe he had voting control, something like 79%.
Yeah, because he's got the
And 𝐒𝐚𝐲 59%. So that's why he could combine the two companies so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Because he
gold
just needed to ask himself whether he approved it. Now the question is, in the combined SpaceX 𝐒𝐚𝐲 company, where's his voting control? Does he have 79% still? I don't know. Okay, but it's going to be probably north of 60 and below 80. So significant chunk, which is larger, I believe, than his economic interest.
Right.
Right, of those combined companies. So there's some uncertainty here but if you just look at the economic part, he'd have about 29% of all three companies combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, one of the points I've made over and over again on the show is that most of the big players in all three companies are the same. It's his set of buddies that have been hanging out and buying stuff and will follow him wherever he goes.
Yes.
And so those folks are going to do what he wants to be done. I think there will be retail shareholders, that might fall one way or the other, but the big guys are going to go along. And he's using major investment banks to help structure the thing. And they're going to know this thing is going to be so clean.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Now, if SpaceX, we thought that SpaceX was going to IPO at 1.5 trillion.
Right.
Right. Let's say we take it there. Let's say before this deal gets combined, SpaceX is now valued at 1.5 trillion. I'm separating the two companies, by the way, here, but you can think of a combined entity of 1.85 trillion. But that's just because we thought SpaceX by itself would be at 1.5. In that case, if you combine the companies and Tesla's valuation hadn't changed between now and whenever this happens, Elon would own about 32% economic ownership in the companies, over $1 trillion.
Right.
Now, what's interesting is that if Tesla does appreciate, let's say just to $2 trillion, I'm just picking a number out of thin air.
Sure.
Then Elon's ownership comes down. So he actually, right now, he has a little bit of conflict of interest because the lower Tesla is before this deal is consummated, the greater ownership he would have.
I see. Okay.
So Elon, I believe Elon will do the right thing. I'm not
Right,
worried about this, but
right.
just to state the conflict,
Sure.
it's in his economic interest right now for Tesla to be valued lower vis-a-vis SpaceX.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not worried about him not doing the right thing there. I think he will. And whether he gets 30% or 29%, I don't think it matters. Elon always said about Tesla that he wants 25% plus. Enough to have a lot of influence, but not enough to have supreme control. I don't think that he would want supreme control necessarily. He would be looking for that in a combined Tesla SpaceX deal. But economic ownership of 30% plus wouldn't surprise me.
and so interesting that we're talking about this year because the Tesla number could jump radically. We've
Mm,
all talked about this. Even Dan Ives thinks it'll be base case 2 trillion and best case 3 trillion before the end of this year. And then SpaceX, once they go public, who knows what the public is going to decide it's worth.
that's right. And speaking of which, the largest IPO in the world was Saudi Aramco, 1.7 trillion.
Okay.
I think they floated like 1% of the share, some tiny amount. SpaceX here, if you put it on the chart, at 1.5 trillion now. Of course, with XAI, it might be more like 1.85.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wrote a post and I said, well, you can bet that Elon would like to go down in the record books of having the largest IPO to date.
Of course he would.
So here we go. Here's a pathway now that they're on to do that.
Yep.
Okay. Let's talk about now something I think that's very important for Tesla investors to understand. So we're moving away from SpaceX. We're just now looking at Tesla. Elon at the annual meeting talked about how they're building a 1 million unit Optimus production line at Fremont and a 10 million line at Giga Texas.
Mhm.
Okay. And in fact, the work has already begun to do that.
Right.
Okay. And thanks to Joe Techmeyer, we have, his daily or every couple of days drone videos. But here's the site that they're going to build this 8 million square foot factory for Optimus. It's on the
Mhm.
banks of the Colorado River. They're going to build this ecological zone here, park, and they're going to build a robot factory here. And here's Giga Texas, the main building as it stands today. So it's right next door.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is about a 10 million square foot building. And I think they're going to build about an 8 million square foot building
Right.
here, I believe.
Right. Right.
And we've got Optimus saying home sweet home. Okay. Oh, and here, by the way, is downtown Austin for those just looking to situate everything.
Okay.
Okay. All right. These numbers are really rough, but you'll see in a second this won't matter. This is a breakdown of Tesla's existing factories. Tesla last year did revenue of about 95 billion.
Mhm.
And I just, best of my ability, really roughly sort of said, okay, here's where they all are. So we've got Giga Nevada at about 3 billion. The Shanghai mega factory, maybe about 3 billion, ramping. Okay, Giga Berlin. Oops, so we've covered the legend here. And then we've got Lathrop, the mega factory, as
Mhm.
Bradford likes to say. I added the global service network, charging and service centers
Mm.
here just to be complete. They're not factories, but just to account for the revenue. Giga Texas here close to 15 billion. Fremont maybe over 20 billion. And then Giga Shanghai at about 27 billion. Again, give or take a couple
Sure.
billion in all these numbers. I don't know for sure where
Mhm.
Giga Berlin is and Giga Texas is. I could be wrong on those numbers. Okay. What will the revenue be, Randy, from a Optimus line in Fremont? If you're producing 1 million robots, what will the revenue be?
Okay, so first of all, I've had this discussion over the last week with Grok as well as Jeff, who knows a little bit about building factories. I've built a few factories, nothing that size, more like 25,000 square foot factories, but it's not a huge scientific experiment to figure out how much space would the parts and pieces and bits take up, how much would the finished product take up in terms of warehousing space, how much would a line take up. It's that, you just sort of figure all this stuff out. And Grok came up with a much lower number than I did, and Jeff agreed, and I think Brian might have agreed too. But we're thinking that we're talking about 35 million robots, not 10.
Well, you're complicating things. I asked you a very specific question.
I know.
In
How
a,
many for
in
10?
a million robot line in Fremont, how much revenue is that going to generate?
All right. I think that's the hardest question that there is on the plate right now for anybody, anything in any company, because it's the largest product ever developed, according to Elon. So how he prices it, and you and I have had this conversation how many
Yeah.
times? Is it going to be 90? Is it going to be $100,000 a year in lease, or is it going to be $400,000 one-time purchase, or is it going to be something that Elon keeps talking about, like a $30,000 or $60,000 purchase, and maybe there's a $500 a month, subscription or something? I don't know. It's so hard to know. Pick a number.
Okay.
The
Well,
lowest?
since
What number?
you're
What number?
complicating the discussion so much, let's just assume, really conservative, that they sell the bot, which I don't think they will,
Yeah,
for 75,000
I
per
think
bot.
that's a very fair expectation.
I can easily make the case that it should be higher, and I can easily make the case it should be recurring revenue.
Yes.
And the reason for that is I think as the bots evolve their capability, if you do it recurring revenue, that gives you the opportunity to increase the price
Sure.
as the bots become more capable. If you
Sure.
sell them, you lose that opportunity.
Yep. Yep.
But anyway, let's just assume they sell them for 75,000.
Got it.
I happen to think it's going to be materially higher.
Yes.
Here's what that factory, what the portion of Fremont would produce. Now, somebody faulted me for saying, well, you didn't reduce the Fremont revenue by the amount that you lose in SNX. Sorry, that was an oversight. Take this down by 5 billion.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But we just added 75 billion in revenue from Optimus.
Yeah.
So again,
Yes.
sorry for that oversight.
Right.
But look at this, 1 million robots almost doubles the revenue of the company.
Right.
If you sold them for 95,000 a piece, you would
Yeah.
double the revenue of the company out of one new production line
Right. In
in the
Fremont.
existing factory in Fremont. If you're looking for the reason why they're stopping SNX,
Right.
this is a good enough economic reason to do so. If you're looking around to say, oh, where are we going to build the first factory and how quickly can we do this? Oh, look, we have this line that's making 5 billion in revenue and very tiny profit. We can get rid of that and we can make 75 billion from that same space and maybe 35 billion in profit.
Right.
No brainer.
No brainer.
This is the definition of no brainer. If you look in the dictionary now, this should be in there as the definition.
And
Okay.
yet Elon wants to make it very clear that the robot does have a brain.
Yes. Yes. All right. Now, Randy, same question.
I know. Here we go.
If you build a 10 million unit line
Yes.
in Texas, and I know you think it could be 35 million.
Yes.
I hear you.
Yeah.
10 million, just 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
What will the annual revenue be?
Well, 10 times what you just put up there.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Optimus factory in Texas
Yeah.
could produce 750 billion per year. Again, that's if they sell the bots. This is not a recurring
Right.
revenue model in this
Right.
case. This is not what I think is going to happen. I'm just being very conservative here. Okay. Now, my oversight of knocking this down by 5 billion no longer matters. Okay. All these no longer matter. The revenue of the company now is of this one line is 750 billion.
Yeah, and that's if it's only 10 million robots.
Only 10 million.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you have 10 million robotaxis at that point, you have a similar 750 billion revenue.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not forgetting robotaxi and how significant that is. And robotaxi might be more of a nearer term opportunity than this 10 million robots is.
Yeah, 10 million robotaxis. I would think it might be around the same time.
Could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the clearest way that I've come up with to date to show the magnitude of the opportunity for Tesla. Okay? If you still don't get it, okay, here's another way I'll try to show this. With 750 billion coming out of one factory, How do you think that compares with the GDP of the largest cities in the United States?
Would be bigger than all of them.
Well, no, New York, New Jersey, Newark is
Oh,
about
okay.
1.8 trillion.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so you're about halfway there.
Or you combine the two, you are.
Well, sure. Yes. Right. And there's a bunch of other cities that are around the 400 half to half trillion mark.
Hmm.
400 billion to 600 billion. There's a bunch of them you can see. The LA area is about a trillion.
Hmm. Hmm.
This, by the way, right here is Austin at about 250 billion. So this would be quadrupling the GDP of Austin. Now, I know in the comments someone is going to say, well, CERN, GDP is not revenue.
Right.
You're right. And actually, I think revenue would understate the GDP impact because Tesla would sell the bots
Yeah.
and they would go into factories and do more work and create more GDP. So there's
Right.
actually a multiplier that happens here.
Right.
So I'm just, again, trying to be as conservative as possible with this napkin math analysis.
Hmm.
You could make the Austin area here, you know, the largest or pretty quickly one of the largest economic engines in the entire United States.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
If you have an opportunity to build a robot factory in your city, you should move heaven and earth to make that happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is a massive economic engine for anybody. How does this factory, Randy, compare to GDP of countries? Any idea what a
Uh,
$750 billion factory
I'm
would
sure that
be?
I'm sure it would be at least half, maybe more.
It's almost as big as Taiwan. It would be in the top 25 nations in the world.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's blocking it there, but bigger than Ireland, bigger than Belgium, and almost as big as Taiwan,
Hmm.
and knocking on the door of the Swiss economy at a trillion. If you combine Robotaxi and the 10 million Optimus
Hmm.
factory,
Hmm. Hmm.
right, and you're at about 1.5 trillion,
Hmm.
now you're in the realm of Indonesia and Turkey and knocking on the door of Australia, top 15 economy in the world. One 10 million robot factory selling robots at 75,000 a year.
Hmm. Plus
I
one.
think they're going to be recurring at rates higher than that, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And or it's going to be 35 million out of that one factory, which is going to more than triple the
Yeah.
number. Although maybe when it reaches 35 million per year, they will be being sold to consumers at 30,000. Maybe that's true.
So as bleak as things appear right now for Tesla because of the SpaceX IPO and all the noise,
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to give Tesla investors keep your eye on the prize.
That's right.
And this is the clearest way I can think of to show that
Yeah, it's
in
totally
very
nutty.
simple terms.
Totally nutty. Yep, yep, yep.
Okay. And Elon himself said back in December, double-digit growth is coming within 12 to 18 months
Right.
for GDP. And if implied intelligence is proxy for economic growth, which it should be, triple digit is possible in around 5 years. Triple digit means 100% GDP growth or more in a given year.
Yeah.
I think so. The
Yeah.
math checks out, in my opinion. Once we get to producing, hundreds of millions of robots, we
Right.
can get there.
Right.
I just showed numbers for 10 million. Imagine 100 million,
Right.
right? Just out of one factory, that's 7.5 trillion
Hmm. Hmm.
of revenue. Now, you start to get into the hundreds of millions, I think the price of robots will come down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be at that high level. It's going to
Right.
come way down.
Right.
But then we have to take into account the multiplier effect of putting such cheap labor in the economy and what that does. It's staggeringly large.
Yes. That's really the key to
Yeah.
what's going to happen to GDP. Yeah.
Now, just to kind of bring it back to the near term, because we're not going to have 10 million robotaxis anytime soon. But if we have 55,556, Randy, that could be a billion per quarter or uh, four, if you count the zeros here, a billion per quarter and 4 billion per year.
Okay.
Okay. So not an insignificant amount just from 55,000 cars,
Right.
which easy peasy.
Why
Okay.
55,556?
I guess they were trying to get to a round number of a billion per quarter.
I see. Okay.
Must have backed into this calculation. But thanks, Mark, for the graphic. That was
There you go.
nice.
That's right.
All right, Randy, last but not least. Hey, Dad, how do you spell FOMO? And the father says CNBC.
Oh, yes. All right.
Always
Yes.
good to end with a groan.
Always nice to with a crow. Well, CERN, that's really exciting and fun. And then, as we talked about a minute ago, you can add in the potential for just Starlink. And let's say Starlink only has a billion customers
Yep.
and only at, say, $50 a month. That's 50 billion a month. I don't know. I could multiply 60 trillion, $60 billion, $600 billion a year.
Not bad.
So
Nice,
that just adds
nice spare
another
change.
that adds another similar number to your number.
Yep.
And then you've got the data centers in space. And the only thing I can figure on those is that they're either going to be leasing space, leasing tokens, selling tokens or leasing the available space on those, and or people will put up their own satellites, but Tesla will probably make the satellite, and then they'll charge a launch fee and a maintenance fee, who knows, whatever else. So the numbers on that, if Tesla's talking about, I'm sorry, if SpaceX is talking about a million Starlinks times how much a month for each one? Well, I tried to calculate it. Brian Wang tried to calculate it. Um, we're thinking that each of these new satellites would generate $1 million per year,
Hmm.
at least in revenue. So a million times a million.
It's a big number. Yeah. No, the opportunity is absolutely enormous. I think it'll take a little bit of time to materialize.
Yeah,
We have to solve some problems here on Earth first in order to help us solve our problems by going into space.
right.
Um, I'm interested to see now when Tesla's going to make it official that they're going to start this terafab.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, official, I mean, he's as clear as he can be. He has said, we have to. We'd be stupid not to. Let me see, what else has he said? There will be 10 of them. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure that and the solar fab are both, 100%.
He talked about starting small. He said you want to make your mistakes at a small scale before you scale it up.
Well, he said there's going to be 10.
Yeah.
So the first one would be, I guess maybe
There,
he's going
there was an interview I think that's coming out soon that where he was
to
asked,
say,
is it today? Have you already built one?
yeah.
And he's like, no, it'd be hard to hide that there'll be daily drone flyovers. I guess another thing for Joe Techmeyer to do. And I hope he does. But I think it'd
Yes.
be interesting to watch a semiconductor fab being built from the sky.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. 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 So very big things taking place. And we don't even know what'll be the next one because for 3 years after he talked about the Robotech, I mean, the Optimus, we all assumed that was the biggest thing that could ever be done by a company. But then all of a sudden along comes data centers in space, and you're like, oh, so
Yeah.
what
No,
what could be next?
we all needed to reconsider what we thought the biggest thing. I
That's
guess
right.
we should have said, well, on Earth.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. We always have to preface that, I think, now with our statements.
Oh my,
Biggest thing on Earth.
on Earth.
It's going to be a little bit hard for us to wrap our minds around now about expanding into space. But I think the thing to think about is that with Starship, we've now found a cost-effective way to get to a new continent.
Right. Yes, yes.
It's like we've discovered North America, but
Right,
only
right. Yes,
a million times bigger.
yes.
That's an exciting growth opportunity.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I don't see anybody else even close to plowing that ground. Yeah.
It's going to be fun to watch.
All right, Cern Basher, as always, so much fun to have you on. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.